You are watching the world 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bawa. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. Israeli airstrikes targeting Hezbollah on Monday killed hundreds in Lebanon, which was still reeling from last week's explosions of the Lebanese group's communication devices. Monday was the deadliest day of the Israeli attacks in the country since Israel's 2006 war with Hezbollah. Prime Minister Modi held a bilateral meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in New York. This was the second meeting between the two leaders in about a month. The ninth round of India-EU free trade agreement talks has started. The plan is also to discuss concerns over sustainability measures along with core trade issues. Core issues on the negotiating table include trade in goods and services, digital trade, investment protection, government procurement, and intellectual property rights. The Biden administration plans to bar Chinese software and hardware from being used in internet-connected cars over national security concerns, essentially banning all China-made smart vehicles in the US. Washington is concerned about Chinese companies collecting data on US drivers and manipulating vehicles' navigation systems. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan is facing a red-on-red battle with Westminster Council after the UK government promised him new powers to force through the pedestrianisation of Oxford Street. The mayor wants to reboot plans that would make the nation's most famous high street traffic-free. Our big focus, Israeli airstrikes targeting Hezbollah on Monday killed hundreds in Lebanon, which was still reeling from last week's explosions of the Lebanese group's communication devices. Monday was actually the deadliest day of Israeli attacks in the country since Israel's 2006 war with Hezbollah. But diplomats are scrambling to prevent all-out war in the region, including on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is scheduled to arrive on Thursday. Muted criticism from Israel's allies over its Lebanon attacks has now raised concerns there is not enough diplomatic pressure on Netanyahu to de-escalate, as per many analysts. Netanyahu famously hates the UN. In fact, one official said, further adding that, but he does like coming here to tell us that we're all rubbish. Listen in to what Mr. Netanyahu had to say, followed by my colleague Sarah Coates' report from Tel Aviv.
I have a message for the people of Lebanon. Israel's war is not with you. It's with Hezbollah. For too long, Hezbollah has been using you as human shields. It placed rockets in your living rooms and missiles in your garage. Those rockets and missiles are aimed directly at our cities, directly at our citizens. To defend our people against Hezbollah strikes, we must take out those weapons.
Certainly a very worrying situation in the Middle East. The Pentagon announcing it is deploying additional troops to the region amid fear of an all-out escalation between Israel and Hezbollah. Now, over the course of Monday, the IDF says that it struck more than 1,000 Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon and also in the Baalbek region in the east of Lebanon, with chaos on the ground as people flee for safety. Now, according to Lebanon's health ministry, more than 270 people have been killed, more than 1,000 others wounded. And late on Monday night, the Israeli military carried out what it is calling a targeted strike on the southern suburbs of Beirut, after what we do understand is the third in charge of Hezbollah. This is the commander of the southern region. So certainly tensions are continuing to escalate. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is warning of difficult days ahead. Well, we've also heard from the Defence Minister Yoav Gallant. He's come out to say that the IDF is crushing Hezbollah infrastructure that's been built up for decades, saying that the head of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, now remains alone. Sarah Coates for NDTV, Tel Aviv.
Well, as Sarah Coates is reporting, the US is sending a small number of troops to the Middle East as Israeli forces and Hezbollah fighters intensify their cross-border attacks. In fact, the troops would actually add to the 40,000 American forces already in the region. Well, for further clarity from Haifa, we have with us Erin Singer joining us. Thanks so much, Erin, for making time for us as always. Do any leaders have a good answer to the question, tell me how this ends, and your reaction to the state of emergency and whether you think Hezbollah has the capability to further retaliate?
Yes, they are capable. We have been feeling it in the last 2 days. They have been launching rockets to areas that were not targeted in the last 11 months. If we were used to see Israeli cities and villages being targeted only in the Galilee area, now there's a new reality in Israel. I'm looking at the list of places that have been targeted today. Look at the list. Haifa was targeted. The Haifa Bay was targeted, and you have places that are beyond Haifa, southbound of Haifa, where you can see that rockets of Hezbollah were launched from Lebanon. Now, this new state of emergency that has been declared by the Israeli government is for the entire state of Israel. The government of Israel is now telling the Israeli citizens that from now on, each and every city all over Israel can be targeted, not only in the northern part. Tel Aviv is going to be targeted, the Tel Aviv greater area will be targeted, the Sharon cities, even Jerusalem, and even in other places in the southern part of Israel will be targeted. Beersheba, maybe even Elat. We are now in a new reality. And you know what? If you ask the average Israeli today, he will tell you that the Israelis will tell you, I think I didn't make any survey about it, but you can see it on the surveys, on the polls in Israel, on Israeli channels. Israelis are much more willing to sacrifice today because ever since October 7th, ever since the great massacre that in which Israelis were slaughtered and butchered and raped, something happened to the people of Israel. Something happened to the Israeli citizens. They are more willing to sacrifice for the defense of Israel, for the sake of their children and grandchildren. And this is why you will not see demonstrations of Israelis saying that they are fed up with the army activities in the north. No, Israelis want to go back to their houses in the northern part of Israel, right next to the border with Lebanon, knowing that their government has done everything it can do in order to make sure that we will not have another October 7th, that Hezbollah in the north will not do what Hamas did on October 7th.
In other news, Prime Minister Modi, during his meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, affirmed that everyone agrees with the need to reach a ceasefire in the ongoing war in Ukraine and the restoration of peace and stability. This was the second meeting between the two leaders in about a month. And Prime Minister Modi had visited Ukraine, as you know, and as we had covered, on the 23rd of August, and reiterated India's willingness to contribute in all possible ways to facilitate an early return of peace in the Ukraine war. In fact, Vishnu Shom has the lowdown for you.
At the culmination of a very hectic and perhaps successful travel to the United States of the Prime Minister, where he has had a bilateral meeting with the US, a Quad summit, an important association or speech at the United Nations General Assembly, comes news of a meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, it's an important meeting because it's been done at the request of the Ukrainians. It comes approximately a month after Prime Minister Modi was in Kiev. It is the third meeting between the two leaders in approximately 3 months. I was in Kiev last month. I was at a press conference of the Ukrainian president in which the tone which was used and perhaps some of the references and concerns which Ukraine had to the continued import of Russian oil and some would suggest critical remarks were made even while Prime Minister Narendra Modi was still on Ukrainian soil. The fact that Ukraine has called this meeting perhaps seems to indicate that they are in fact willing to continue engaging India as a country that genuinely wants a peaceful solution to what is happening in that part of Europe. There is a war between Russia and Ukraine, which India wants to end. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and this is what the Foreign Secretary said today, is deeply concerned on the conflict and the toll that it is taking, not just in Ukraine but around the world. It's impacting the global south as well. There was no further discussion on the entire issue of Russia's continued import of India's continued import of Russian oil. So that didn't come up in the talks today. And India remains hopeful of a solution to end the war. But in terms of specifics and whether there is a real proposal which New Delhi has in hand, there isn't one right now. When it does emerge, it will emerge. But certainly India is working towards a process. There can't be anything instant. So at the culmination, at the end of this very hectic trip of the Prime Minister, just before he flies out to New Delhi or has in fact or will be leaving for the airport to fly out, comes this news of this meeting between Volodymyr Zelensky and Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Well, let's switch tracks now. The Biden administration plans to bar Chinese software and hardware from being used in internet-connected cars over national security concerns, essentially banning all China-made smart vehicles in the United States. Why is this happening? Well, Washington is concerned about Chinese companies collecting data on US drivers and manipulating vehicles' navigation systems. The US's ongoing efforts to crack down on the use of Chinese technology has begun to drop a digital iron curtain between the two superpowers, experts argue. And some China experts believe the US's fear of Beijing ends up hurting American consumers. But one analyst has actually said on record that the proposed ban reflects complexities of a world where a lot of connected devices can be weaponized. And with that, let's get you a quick update from the United Kingdom to London's Oxford Street specifically, which was actually once the jewel in the crown of Britain's retail sector, but there's no doubt that it has suffered hugely over the last decade. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan is facing a red-on-red battle with Westminster Council after the government promised him new powers to force through the pedestrianisation of Oxford Street. The Labour Mayor essentially wants to reboot plans that would make the nation's most famous high street traffic-free, starting with the stretch between Oxford Circus and Selfridges. His vision is actually to compete with Times Square in New York and Champs-Élysées in Paris, but can that actually happen? Radhika Iyer reports.
Oxford Street, Britain's jewel in the crown of its retail sector, is likely to be free of traffic. Labour Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, announced that a little over 1 kilometre of the arterial Oxford Street, home to some of the best retail shops in Europe, will be free for pedestrians only. From Marble Arch to Oxford Circus will have no vehicles plying on it, a move which is facing opposition within days of announcement. So what is the plan? As part of the 150 million project, the plan is to ban traffic. The project is aimed at helping the retail sector revive after big names such as Debenhams, House of Fraser, Topshop shut shop. Robbie, who has been selling memorabilia on Oxford Street since he was 34, thinks it is a bad idea. Change is hard to adapt to, and buses bring in more people, he feels. Imam, a Bangladeshi who sells Dutch pancakes on the street, has mixed opinions. Access for all is a concern, but more pedestrian space means more time spent by shoppers and tourists. So that means more business, he feels. I spoke to some people to get their reaction to Sadiq Khan's plot for London's most famous high street.
Students really form the heart and the life in central London. And with me are two students, one from the University of Exeter and Caitlin, welcome, and one from the University of Warwick. Welcome, Mehek.
Yes.
Mehek, you're a Londoner. You've been here for your life.
Yeah, I've been born and brought up in London, but my parents are from India.
Tell me, did you shop 30 times in 1 year on Oxford Street?
Definitely not.
No.
Probably a couple times a year maximum. I think maybe when I was younger, we came here a bit more, but now it's not so much of a regular spot for shopping, definitely.
What does Oxford Street mean to you?
Much the same, actually, I think. It's ever since I've been young, I've been here occasionally. There's lots of shops and beautiful lights, and especially Christmas time. It really lights up. Yeah. Although recently, same as Mehek, it's been so busy and so hectic. It's not necessarily like a relaxed shopping destination.
Quick reactions. Sadiq Khan's idea, good or bad?
Do you know, I think it's a great idea. Oxford Street is in disrepair. We as Londoners, I don't know when was the last time we went down Oxford Street. It's a great tourist spot, so we should make it more livable, more practical for tourists.
The mayor has huge claims of his pedestrianized avenue giving competition to Times Square in New York, Champs-Élysées in Paris, and La Rambla in Barcelona. The opposition Conservative Party, which pulled out support to a similar move in 2018, has started ridiculing the move already. So the idea may witness brakes being applied before traffic is fully banned. Radhika Iyer in London, NDTV.
Well, news and updates continue in a moment right here on NDTV 24/7. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Telegram will provide authorities with user data in response to legal requests in a major policy shift to discourage criminals from exploiting the messaging app. This is what their CEO, Pavel Durov, has said on record. Many cyber criminals had already begun ditching the app. In fact, anticipating changes to its policies after France arrested Durov in August for refusing to cooperate with investigations into criminal activity on Telegram, many users had already started making a switch. But Mr. Durov's troubles in France and Elon Musk's feud with the Brazilian judiciary over X reflect growing international efforts to regulate tech companies. As US geopolitical might wanes and the power of tech platforms has grown, it's become much harder to get other countries, including Western allies, to leave them alone. This is what many tech bloggers also believe. And let's get you a quick update from the neighborhood from Pakistan, where Lieutenant General Muhammad Asim Malik has been appointed as the new Director General of Pakistan's spy agency, Inter-Services Intelligence, the ISI. Now, the post of ISI chief is considered one of the most important in the Pakistan Army, which has ruled the country for more than half of its 77-plus years of existence and has hitherto wielded considerable power in matters of security as well as foreign policy. Lieutenant General Malik will assume his new role in about 6 days on the 30th of September. To the US now, the big question is, how will Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's campaigns impact Indians immigrating to the US and vice versa? In fact, Indian-American Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy spoke to NDTV earlier regarding this and more. Here's a snippet for you.
Congressman Krishnamurthy, thank you very much for joining us here on NDTV. Congressman Krishnamurthy, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as you know, is in the US right now. He attended the Quad Summit over the weekend. The Quad Alliance includes, of course, India, Japan, Australia, the United States, which is a counterbalance to China. Now, President Joe Biden hosted his final Quad meeting this weekend, but Biden's not going to be around much longer. He's not going to be president much longer. It's really an uncertain time here in the US. What happens to the Quad after November the 5th?
I think that the Quad is going to last well beyond November. I think it's been embraced by presidents of both parties, whether it was Obama or Trump or Biden. And I think that the relationships between the US and India, as well as Australia and Japan, transcend politics at this point. So I think that this gathering is going to continue for many years to come.
Is there anything that worries you if we have Trump in the mix, worries you with regards to the Quad and India?
No, I think that, Donald Trump will continue to be a friend of India, although I'm very certain that Kamala Harris will be the next president, in which case we'll have our first Indian American president of the United States. And of course, she will continue to maintain and strengthen relations between the world's oldest and the world's largest democracies in the US and in India.